born on a small island in the middle of Bass Strait called King Island back in when dinosaurs ruled the earth. And it was bleak, and that's because it's in the middle of the roaring 40s, and if you know your geography, there's a constant wind, it's cold, and the people, you're very isolated, and the people become insular and parochial. And if you weren't born on the island, way back when, your families, you were considered an outsider. So we were outsiders because we were sole settlement farmers. Just a bleak, I mean, I had a fabulous childhood, but just bleak is the word that comes to mind about the island. It's, bleak, just bleak. Not fabulously overwhelmed by my physical features, just to give some context, because been overweight all my life, so growing up in a fat-phobic society, not a good place. I don't think I've got a bad social presence, that if you put me in a situation where I don't know anybody or people are awkward, I can make people comfortable or talk to people given any circumstances. I can put on a social, my social manners, for the want of a better terminology, and make me feel comfortable, and hopefully the other person feel comfortable, probably as a result of being overweight all my life. I had to accentuate what I thought was a better quality, and for people to overlook that my body wasn't slim, fat, thin and fabulous sort of thing, but they didn't see that. They remembered the personality rather than the body. I was a nurse 17 years. I mean, it was a baptism of fire, like old school training. People say, oh, it didn't happen. Oh yeah, it did. Oh yeah, it did. You know, it's a wonder more people didn't die, really. Because you could, in Brisbane, you could become a nurse at 17. You think about it. You think about that. That if somebody had started at 17, I was old at 20, doing my training, or older. You could just start nursing at 17. So halfway through your training, you're 18 and a half, all right? And you get presented with that. And you were expected to deal with that and do it well and make sure that everything was done right. 18 and a half. You just don't, I honestly, it made you tough, or you either put it aside, you grew the barrier, did the best you can, put it aside. As soon as you stepped out of the ward, you left it there. Because if you took it home, you'd start, a lot of nurses became alcoholics, became drug addicts because they couldn't put it behind themselves. And it also goes for doctors, because you have to leave it behind. While you're there, you do the best you can. But as soon as you step out of that ward, you leave it behind. You have to have that mental strength to put it behind. Think about it really carefully, because you have literally people's lives in your hands. Everybody says, oh, it's lovely to be a nurse. Oh my goodness gracious me. It's like, no, it's not. Because you're low man on the totem pole, so if anything goes wrong, it's your fault, because the doctors will, the old boys and girls club, they will protect their own. So the nurses are the low man on the totem pole. You are in a very vulnerable position. So you think about it very carefully. David's death. You don't lose your partner of over 30 years without a few incidences of crying. It's the last time. David, my husband, I was 35 when I got married, which is, even for my age group, is, I was well and truly on the shelf or in spinster or whatever you want to call me, wasn't looking to get married, he was the best thing that ever happened to me, and sometimes the worst, but the best thing that happened to me, and the luckiest, because yes, he was a very difficult person, but he was my friend, first and foremost. Being drowned by my sister and brother. On where I was born, King Island, we fished. That was our relaxation. And Dad bought a 14-foot aluminium dinghy. And one of the first times we took it out, we cleaned it, we kept it clean. And my older brother and sister were cleaning it out, and I was helping him, and I was underneath in the middle of the boat. And they flipped it, and I was in the middle of the boat. They got it out. Well, obviously they got it, but I was drowning. I didn't think to drop underneath it and come up. It was just such a shock. So that's my earliest memory. I regret not taking my weight seriously because I'm now type 2 diabetic and have been since I was 40. I should have taken, shoulda, coulda, woulda. I should have taken it seriously, because anybody who's a diabetic knows that it's a slow, progressive illness, and it's you paddle very hard to keep the level of whatever at that. And that would make the pathway that I'm on so much easier. But it is what it is. It is what it is. That I didn't go to university. That I didn't follow what I wanted to do, which was become a zoologist. I know why I didn't do it. It was very pragmatic. But I would have sort of in the back of my mind, would I have been a good zoologist? I don't know. Follow your dreams. Become what you wanted to be, not choose something that would make your mum and dad's life easier, because they would have been quite happy supporting you for those years that you were in university. That's what I regret. That's what I would tell her. David and I were going out. We were not married. Full disclosure, David was Jewish. I am not. And when we got together, David was very secular and remained secular all our married life. And we were invited to his brother's birthday party. And my knowledge of Judaism at that stage was pretty minimal. We'll say zero. I knew what it was, so we'll put it to you that way. And we were invited to his brother's birthday at his brother and his then wife's place. So we came dressed up for a birthday party. Okay? And then we arrived. David's in jeans, I'm in mauve, I can remember it. Mauve, party gear. And they open up, we go into the room. It's second night, Rosh Hashanah. Holy guacamole. I've never been so embarrassed in my life. Thankfully, David's other brother was there, and there was dead silence. Everybody looked at us, and they're dressed up like pox doctors, clerks, in their best bib and tucker. So that means best clothing. And we're dressed in very casual gear. Everybody knows I'm not Jewish, so all of a sudden this shiksa is not respecting the religion. Oh my goodness. And it's the first time I meet the wife's parents, who are Orthodox. That went over like a Led Zeppelin. And it wasn't a good time. Drink Strongbow alcoholic cider and finish off with a Glenfiddich scotch. Never, ever, ever again. I can't do it anyway, but even under the threat of death, would I not do it?
It was a rough time, I take it?
3 days talking to the toilet. No, I gave myself alcoholic poisoning, really severe alcoholic poisoning. And I spoke to the porcelain god for quite some time. My liver to this day does not speak to me. That's why I am basically teetotal, because of Glenfiddich and Strongbow alcoholic cider. 10 foot high and bulletproof when you're young. You're not.
How old were you?
27-ish, 25, 27, somewhere around there. Old enough to know better, young enough to still do it. Still think I could get away with it. Probably golden rule. If you don't want it done to you, don't do it to other people. Because it's really easy to say, sorry, that doesn't make sense. It's really easy to be critical and vengeful when you know that it's not going to blow back on you. So if you don't want something horrible done to you, and horrible is insert your own personal preferences, then don't do it to other people. Dad was born in Balingup, Western Australia. He was I think he was the youngest. And Dad ran away from Western Australia to get away from his family, all right. I think he was one of 6 children. His dad was 60 when he was born. His mother was 40. His father was born in 1864. Okay? He died in his father was born in 1860. He died in 1964. Okay? And there's a few haircuts there. And his mother was 40. Left school when he was 13, after grade 6, middle of the Depression, went out making fences and getting rabbits. Called up or volunteered for World War II. He was born in 1920, so he was 20 when World War II, 1920, when World War II occurred. He became a commando. He was second Commando Force, which is basically West Australian country lads, and was part of, over the umbrella of Sparrow Force, went to Timor and had an interesting time there. Basically, they were cut off from Australia and weren't found. They thought they were either executed or prisoners of war, where in actual fact they were took to the hills of Timor and were guerrillas. Came back, met married mum. Came from Western Australia to Victoria. They went back to Western Australia, and Dad was a naughty boy over there. To this day, don't know what happened. Came back and went down to Loyang, somewhere around there, down to the Loyang electricity grids, bit part of that. And then he was offered a soldier settlement farm on King Island. Yay. He should have stayed in down at the Gippsland. And we went to King Island. When England went into the EU in the early 1970s, we lost our what's the word I'm looking for? We lost our market for our goods, which was cream and milk or butter, and we walked off the farm, flat, motherless, busted. Came over to Victoria, stayed there for a while, and then clamped it up to did the clamp it thing, reference to the Beverly Hillbillies. Went up to Queensland where he retired. Dad suffered from PTSD, incredible, and yeah, he lived his life out in Queensland. that Dad didn't have PSD and he wasn't a drunk. He was a functional drunk, which made life very difficult. We weren't physically abused, unlike a lot of my contemporaries. He wasn't a hit merchant, or neither was Mum. But the fact that he drank scotch, half a bottle to a bottle of scotch per day, made life very difficult. Waking up next to my husband dead. It's not a great one. Horrible. The only thing that made it good was he just slipped away. Horrible. Is the worst when I was training as a nurse and there was a really sick lady, and I trained under extreme circumstances, and there was a really sick woman who'd been in a car accident the previous night. In retrospect, and she was moved off the ward that afternoon, she should have been in intensive care. Her injuries were such that they were they were just life-threatening. And we're not just talking about one injury that was life-threatening, we're talking about multiple injuries that were life-threatening. It was shocking, it was heartbreaking, and it was hard. Would I change it? Nah. Made me what I am today. You can survive. If I could survive that, I can survive anything. And that's what it comes down to. Not everybody likes you. Not everybody will like you. And that's okay. That's okay. Surviving rolling my car 5 times, that was pretty amazing when I was young. I was driving in Queensland and there was gravel on the side of the road, and I veered too close to the road and the tyres lost traction. I was going not a big speed, but it was obviously going fast enough that the tyres lost traction and I flipped the car 5 times. I walked away from it with a cut on my neck from the seatbelt. Totaled the car. I took magic mushrooms. That's the most illegal, I think. Yeah, magic mushrooms. Not supposed to take them. Particularly in Indonesia, mate. That was a long time ago. I think the statute of limitations has passed. Why not? Because if nothing else, if you have no family, it is a record of your life that someone will find interesting. Parts of it they're going to say, oh, that's boring. But if you have no family, or you want to leave a message to your family under these circumstances, it's a good way of doing so, because questions that you never thought to ask. I mean, everybody knows your colour, your favourite colour, blah blah blah, but the worst memory of the worst day of your life, or the worst work day of your life, they tend to resonate and you tend to remember, but you don't tend to tell anybody about them, and people will find that interesting, because and not only that, obviously, but people will find that interesting and go, wow, I'm not the only person who has that memory, or a similar size memory. It's good fun. And it's a what's the word I'm looking for? Come on, Penny, find your words. It's a vault for the future, a vault of information for the future that will not be lost. Bye, camera.